Hi there, I am Haley, and I am the first installment for Tracy's Topic Takeover. If I look familiar, you may have seen my face on Tracy's Instagram. I am her business manager and her video editor, and I have been working for her for almost 6 years. So I've been in Tracy's life for a long time. And if this beautiful background looks familiar to you, it is because this is my sister's studio, and this is where Tracy and her grandkids just got their Christmas pictures done. So me and my sister have kind of wiggled our way into Tracy and Paul's life, and we love it. So Tracy asked me to be her first installment for this topic takeover when she came up with the idea, and I didn't really know what topic I would cover. And then I was thinking about it one day when she shared on her Instagram stories of how she wished she could be a reader like me. And so I brought the topic to her of talking about what if I shared with you how I have somewhat of a life and how I've read over 100 books already this year. So today I'm going to share some tips with you, and hopefully you find them helpful, or hopefully it gives you some ideas of how you can expand your reading if that's something that interests you. So I'll first start by saying that I don't have kids, I don't have a spouse. So I'm in a season of life right now where I can spend more time reading. I do work full-time in K-12 education. I work for Tracy, and then I'm a wedding photographer some weekends out of the year with my sister, and I do some freelance work as well. So I do work a lot, but I still find time to make reading a priority in my life. It's something that I've always loved to do. So Tracy will tell you time and time again that you put the effort into things that are important to you, and reading definitely is something that's important to me. So that's why I dedicate more time to it. I do have somewhat of a life. I'll go hang out with friends, things like that. But like I said, I don't have kids. I don't have a husband that takes up time at home. So when I'm done working and cleaning my house and doing, the daily tasks, I can sit down and I can dedicate time to reading. So I think that also plays a big part in how I accomplish so much. I will say I'm also a fast reader. I've been reading my whole life, and just like with anything, the more you practice, the better you get at it. So it's something that I've become such a quick reader over the years because it's just a muscle that I've exercised time and time again. Another thing that I think helps me, and I think this is something that could be a struggle for someone who's starting out reading, is I truly read books that I actually enjoy. For a long time, I wouldn't put down a book if I wasn't enjoying it. And Tracy even asked me this question a few weeks ago. She said, "Haley, what do you do with a book that you don't like?" And I've gotten to the point where there are so many books that I want to read that I'm okay with just putting a book down if I'm not enjoying it, and DNFing it is what people, I guess, in the reader world call it. So marking it as did not finish. And it's still hard to do that with a book, but I've become much better about it, because why waste time on a book that I really am not enjoying just to say I read it? So even in October, I was reading a book and I got 200 pages into it and I just wasn't enjoying it. So I quit reading it, and that stung a little bit because I had spent a good few days reading to, the 200 page mark in the book. So just to set it aside, but it's just not worth it for me to waste time on a book that I'm not enjoying. So if you're struggling to read, or if you're struggling with a book, my suggestion is just try putting the book down. It doesn't mean you have to put it down forever. You can always put the book to the side, pick it back up later. I've done that with books too. There are some books that I have started 3 or 4 times before I have actually finished them, just because when I pick it up, I'm not in the right headspace to read that book. So it's easier for me to just set it aside, read a book I actually enjoy, and then pick it back up again later and actually finish it and have a good time reading it, because reading is a hobby. Why would you treat it as something that's like pulling teeth? Another thing is I'm usually reading at least 2 books at a time, and I know some people can't do that. They don't have the They say they don't have the brain power to read 2 books at the same time. For me, when I'm reading 2 books, they're usually 2 very different books, so that way I'm not getting them mixed up. And again, I've been reading my entire life, so it's just something that I've gotten better at over the years of being able to keep track of 2 books at the same time when I'm reading them. So usually I'm reading a book on my phone or on the Kindle app on my phone and an actual physical copy of a book. And then there are some times when I'm also listening to an audiobook or I'm reading 2 physical books at once. The only time I'm reading 2 physical books at once is if I'm reading, like, let's say a fiction novel and then a nonfiction novel, like a personal growth book that I incorporate into my nightly routine when I'm doing like my daily devotional and my gratitude journal. The book on my Kindle app on my iPhone is usually always a lighthearted, fluffy romance novel, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I will read those smutty romance novels because they're just something fun and something enjoyable and something that just is a good escape from the real world, right? And so the reason I always read them on my phone is because my phone is always with me. So if I read them on the Kindle app on my phone, I do have the option to actually open the Kindle app up on my computer or even on my Kindle itself. But for the most part, I just read it on my phone. My phone screen is big enough. Thankfully, my eyesight is good enough that I can read the book on my phone. But because I have my phone always with me, it's easy for me to pick up my book when I have pockets of time. For example, yesterday I was at the grocery store and I was waiting in the checkout line for a good 15 minutes. So I picked up my book and I read while I was waiting to be able to check out. If me and my sister are photographing a wedding and we have some downtime, I pick up my book and I read it when we're sitting there waiting for the next step or when we're waiting for people to finish up with dinner. So I'm finding these little pockets of time throughout my day to be able to add reading into my life. And again, because they're light, fluffy reads on my phone, it's not something that I have to, they're not books that I'm like having to remember all of these fine specific details. So it's just easy for me to get reading in. I think if you would be surprised when you're able to add like 10 or 15 minute increments in throughout the day of how much reading you can actually get done. So while the books that are on my phone are usually light, fluffy, easy reads, the physical books that I'm reading are usually something that relates to a challenge. So this year I have expanded my reading genres a little bit by putting at least 2 prompts a month on my bingo board. And I've talked about the bingo board workshop. I have a workshop with Tracy, but I do try to put at least 2 reading prompts on there each month just to expand my reading. So with that, I've read classics this year. I've got back into reading thrillers, which aren't my go-to type books. I've listened to memoirs on using the Spotify app, which is an app I already pay for. So I have found ways to expand my reading while still keeping the light, fluffy reads. My physical books are usually thrillers, a general fiction novel. Sometimes I'll throw a horror novel in there, although not very often. I'm kind of a baby. When I'm reading a physical book, I try to read I make it a goal to try and read by chapter. So I never put down a book at night, a physical book at night, in the middle of a chapter. On my phone, I'll stop a book in the middle of a chapter, but when I'm reading a physical book, I set a goal to try and at least read 1 full chapter a night. And I never really put a goal on myself for, how quick I want to finish a book. There are some times when I'm like, well, I would like to get this book done just so I can start the next one. So sometimes I'll be like, how fast could I really finish this? And I'll kind of look at how many chapters are in the book altogether and then divide the book by, let's say, if I want to read a 40-page book in about a week, I will do the math to see how many chapters I would have to read each night. Generally, I try to read at least 2 chapters per night just because that's just how I am. If I'm really enjoying and devouring a book and the chapters are short, I will obviously read much further than that. The book that I'm reading right now I'm not hating it, but I'm not loving it. So most nights I'm reading one chapter a night. If I find myself like losing focus on the book, I'll just finish the chapter and I'll put it down and I'll pick it up the next night, because like I said, reading is something that I enjoy. I'm not going to force myself to read something longer and just not grasp the concept of the book if I'm not truly enjoying it. So I think that's a big thing too, is again, it goes back to, if you're really not enjoying the book, why spend so much time reading it, and why torture yourself to read a book that you really don't enjoy? So like I said, with my physical books, I'm usually reading a general fiction, a historical fiction, a thriller, a memoir, and then if I'm reading two physical books at once, it's because one of them is a fiction genre and one is a nonfiction genre that I'm reading a chapter a night. Personal growth, a faith-based book, so I do have a stack of those that I read, and I'll read one chapter a night only for those when I'm doing my nightly routine. I would say about 5 years ago, I set a goal in my head that I wanted to try and read at least 5 books a month. So that got me to 60 books a year. So for a long time, that's what I set my goal as, was if I can read 5 books a month, that gets me to 60 books a year. And that's a good chunk of reading for me. That's something that I'm happy with. Like I said, as I've kind of fallen into this routine of reading a book on my phone, reading a physical book, and reading by chapter, it's really helped me hit my stride with reading so I can read more. So I've been able to expand my reading. So the number of 5 books per month has just been ingrained in my head now, because that's just been a goal that I had set for a good number of years. And so now that's something that just sticks with me. I hit the 60 book mark this year about, I would say, early July. So you would be surprised at how much you read if you're just reading one chapter a night. So if you're setting a goal for yourself to read one chapter per night, you would be really surprised at how many books you can get read in a year. The bottom line is it's not important how many books you read in a year. I just think it's important that you read. It helps expand your world. It helps expand your knowledge and, your vocabulary in ways that you wouldn't expect it. And for me, it's fun. I get it. Not everybody likes reading. It's not something that they feel like they're strong in. But again, it's something that you have to practice and that you have to put the effort into. The more you practice and the more you're working on it, the better you become at it. So like I said, I'm also, with my bingo board, I usually put a prompt or 2 on there a month to try and expand my reading. So this year I mentioned I've read classics like Lord of the Flies, which was one that I definitely only read one chapter a day, because you know what, some classics just aren't for everybody. And that book was definitely not for me. And if it wasn't something that was on my bingo board as a prompt, as a goal that I wanted to accomplish for myself, it would have been a book that I put down because I just did not care about that book. But because I actually set it as a monthly goal for myself, I did make it a goal that I could not put that book down and not finish it. So that was a book that I definitely only read one chapter a day. I read it in August. So I would read that while I was in my pool, swimming in my pool. I would hold my book. Like I said, I read anywhere. So that was a book that I would read in my pool, because at least I was doing something enjoyable while I was suffering through the book. And I am so sorry if you love that book. If you watch book talk at all, you will hear reading is subjective, which we know that. If you like a book and someone else doesn't, that's okay. And so that, again, it goes back to just finding the type of books that you really love. Some people, all they read is thriller books because that's really what they love. I am a baby, like I said, so I don't read thrillers very often. When I find one that I do like, I'll fly through it pretty quickly. Actually, one of my favorite books for the year was a thriller novel. And so even with audiobooks still counts as reading. So you're expanding your world in a way, even if it's with audio. So I have come to realize about myself, though, my sister can listen to audiobooks all day, every day, and that is not me. I can only listen to audiobooks when I'm either cooking or when I'm getting ready in the morning. I cannot listen to audiobooks while I'm in the car or while I'm like on the treadmill. My brain gets pulled in too many directions and I don't know what's going on. So I've found that if I'm listening to an audiobook while I'm cooking or getting ready, that is great. It's not too long for me where I start losing focus and I can actually pay attention to the book. So I have listened to more audiobooks this year than I have any other year, and that's a pretty big accomplishment for me because I am very much a traditionalist when I prefer reading books physical or like on an e-reader, Kindle, my phone, whatever. So I think those are really all of the tips that I kind of have, and I don't even know that they are tips. It's just the way that I've really hit my stride with reading. Last year I did read 100 books, I think, but I didn't hit that 100 book mark until end of December. So it is November 16th right now that I am filming this, and I am at 101 books, I think. So this method that I've been using this year, like I said, has definitely helped me hit my stride with reading, and it's a way that I'm able to take in more books while still understanding them and comprehending what I'm reading. Tracy did ask the question, she was very curious, of if I'm reading a nonfiction book, what do I do to kind of take in things that, I want to remember or put into practice. And again, I do read nonfiction books, but I am not strictly reading nonfiction books. If I am reading a personal growth or a nonfiction book, I do not hesitate to highlight my books, to put sticky notes in there. I'll even fold pages in those so I can go back to them. A few books that I've read, I would write the things I wanted to remember on Post-it notes, and I would stick them kind of on my bedside, the wall beside my bed, just so I could read them each day, kind of like Tracy's note card system that she has kept intact. I haven't read as many personal growth books this year as I've read last year and the year before. It's something that I do want to get back to in 2025, so those items will definitely go on my bingo board to, read a personal growth book and actually take notes on the things and maybe start implementing my own note cards into there, because I do think that's a really effective method of studying, writing down the things you want to remember and studying them in that way. I hope that this helped you gain some knowledge of maybe how you can read more books in a year if that's something that interests you. Again, it is not a competition. You don't have to read 100 books in a year. You don't have to read 5 books in a year. I just think it's important to read something. And not everybody feels that way, right? Like, you put at the top of your list of what is a priority and what's important to you. And reading is not important to everybody. And that's okay, because there are things that I just don't find are important in my life as some other people do in theirs. Landscaping would be an example of that. So anyways, those are my tips, tricks, whatever you want to call them. On the blog post, I will, and actually down below too, I will link my top favorite books that I've read this year. They do span a wide variety of genres. There are memoir on there, there's some nonfiction, there is mainly fiction, thrillers. So I will share my top 10 reads from this year down below, or this year so far. And then on the blog, because we are in gift guide season, I will link some book-related gifts on the blog. And then don't forget, so I think this video will actually publish on Black Friday. So be watching for the rest of the gift guides that Tracy's been publishing, that I've been helping her with. Watch for any newsletters that come out, because the gift guides are always in there. Sometimes I take over the newsletter, which I always find enjoyable. And there will also be Black Friday sales and things like that. So thanks for hanging out today. If you want to take advantage of the bingo board workshop, that will be on sale as well. So there's a coupon code below for that. The bingo board has really changed my life this year, and it's something that I'm still going to continue implementing in 2025. So I would definitely take advantage of that if you want to. I think every replay and workshop and replay on the Hensel Coaching and Consulting site is on sale right now for Black Friday. So take advantage of that. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving if you celebrate it, and I hope you have a happy holidays, and thanks for hanging out with me today.